All right, let's get started then.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Jonesy and Brown. My name is Brown. You see my partner over there, Mike Jones. A year wiser. A year slightly older.
Day older than I was yesterday.
All right. Well, hey, look, man, it's all right. How do you feel, brother? It's been a few weeks since we've done a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, man? How have you been?
Oh man, it's been a interesting couple weeks. Lots happened in the world.
A lot has happened in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Since the last time we did a show, it's been an NBA champion. There's been an
we talked right after we have talked after the NBA championship.
Okay, so we talked Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we talked Lakers. Didn't get a chance.
Remember we had AG on.
Okay, yeah, that's right. All right, so we talked Lakers. We didn't necessarily talk baseball. Dodgers win the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
So that was big. On the hometown front, our team, the Philadelphia 76ers, have a new GM, new coach.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to thrust themselves into, they're trying to make some big off-season moves. But I wanted before we got into that, I wanted to ask you a quick question.
Okay.
Are you and I, we've been doing this podcast for a while now. We have a following. People like our show. People check us out. This week, the 76ers released their new city jerseys for the 2020-2021 season. Have you seen them?
The black jerseys with the
Boathouse Row on them.
With Boathouse Row on them, yeah. I've seen them.
What did you?
I'll pass.
You'll pass?
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I wasn't feeling them when I first saw them. Wasn't feeling the new drip when I saw them. But I will hand it to the Sixers because they, I love the way they marketed it. So they made these little gift boxes and they gave them to a bunch of people all over the city. And as I'm watching people get these boxes, which have the new jerseys and have all these little prizes in them, now I'm getting jealous. And it's like I wasn't feeling the jerseys before, but now that I see the boxes, now that I see the presentation, I'm feeling kind of left out. I'm looking around, and let's see. Natalie Eganoff got one. Alex Holly got one. Jalen Mills got one. I'm looking. Gillian Wallow got one. And I'm sitting over here thinking, we got a pretty decent podcast. People like Jonesy and Brown. People rock with Jonesy and Brown. How come Jonesy and Brown ain't getting no box? As I'm sitting here, as I'm on Instagram, I'm on Instagram looking at people get their boxes. Now I'm feeling left out.
You'll have to write a strongly worded email to the media relations department and tell them that you need some sort of remediation to this situation.
Well, actually, I did. And my friends at the Sixers, if you can see the screen, I got the official podcast drip for Jonesy and Brown.
Okay.
All right, so let's see what's in the official podcast drip for Jonesy and Brown.
That's a good question. What do we have in the box?
All right, I'm gonna open up the box. All right, I got. Let's see. Not the new hats with the new logo. I got a Sixers hat with the old logo,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks and it looks kind of worn. All right.
So not a new hat.
Not a new hat, but I do got a new shirt from Burlington Coat Factory.
It's a new shirt. Got the tags on it and everything.
Tags on it and everything. From Burlington Coat Factory. $10, but you know it's a Sixers shirt and it's official. Oh! Wait a minute! I see the black. Do we have the new? Oh, do we have the new? Oh, wait a minute! Wait! Oh no!
No, that's not the new one.
No, this is not the new one. This is the old Iverson.
Oh yeah, that's about 20 years old.
Yeah. This one's about it's got to be 20 years old because this one's made by Champion. This is back when Champion was still making NBA jerseys. So you know that this is old.
So essentially, what you're telling me is you got nothing from the Sixers.
No, I did not get nothing from the Sixers. This box ain't empty yet. Hold on.
What else we got? All right, let's see.
Because they had that special basketball card with Iverson and Ben Simmons on it with the New Jerseys. I got a Bob Thornton. Thornton basketball.
Is that an NBA Hoops basketball card?
He's an NBA Hoops Bob Thornton basketball card. Wait a minute, I think they got some snacks in here too. Hold on. And a Michelob Ultra. So I can sit here, I can look at all this swag that I got from the official podcast drip of the Sixers, from Jonesy and Brown. They put it in this nice box. Box. That's what the podcasters get. The official podcast, and I'm gonna wash it down with this Michelob Ultra. 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. That's the official drip. Thank you, Sixers. Thank you for looking out for your boys. I appreciate that. Gotta love that.
Oh man.
Gotta love that. Hey man. Let's see. Let's get into this. Let's get into the whole NBA offseason because like we said earlier, new GMs in town, a whole new front office.
Mm-hmm. Well, not completely new.
Not completely new because Elton Brand with the team.
New head coach, new team president, GM is still in place, but we'll see what exactly happens to his role with Morey as the new president of basketball operations.
Did you find that weird? Did you think that was weird that they decided to keep Elton Brand? They bring in a new team president, new head coach, and the thing about it was you bring in Glenn Rivers, and he's somebody who's run a team before. You bring in a coach who has experience running a team, and I got to think he's not just going to. You don't go from a situation like the Clippers where you the head guy in charge to just being the coach. So he's going to have some sort of say. He's not running the whole thing, but he has to have some say. So
I'm sure he will have some input as to how the roster is constructed going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But with Morey, who is an experienced front office guy in place, and then you still have Brand sitting in the GM's chair, I find it hard to imagine that Doc will have the same or anywhere near the same level of influence he had with the Clippers when it comes to personnel. There is a clear level of decision-making power that goes over Doc's head.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that wasn't a deterrent. Doc still came to, Glenn still came to town. So I have to think, he's good with it to an extent. But I guess I was more concerned. I since maybe concerned is a bad term, but I wanted to know. I was curious as to what would happen to Elton Brand, and it's not like I'm sitting here, beating the drum for Elton Brand. Like I'm gonna be heartbroken if he was pushed out.
I mean, truth be told, in his short tenure, he has some scars on his resume. The Horford contract is not a bright spot. Many people look at Tobias Harris as being overpaid and a backup plan to having not been able to retain Jimmy Butler. So while many people are still personally fond of Elton Brand, we can't sit here and say that he's done an exemplary job so far.
No, and I think honestly that's probably where I stand, because I think Elton Brand's a good guy. I liked him as a player. I was happy that when he retired, he was able to stay within the organization and have a position. But like you said, there are some scars. The Tobias Harris does look overpaid right now. Al Horford doesn't fit in this system. And you just watched a guy that you traded two comparable pieces for, that you then lost in the offseason, take his next team to the finals and win a game or two.
Yeah, they went to 6 games. They won 2.
Yeah, they won a couple games.
And in those 2 games, Jimmy Butler was amazing. 35-point plus triple doubles.
Exactly. So, I think honestly, who knows what's going to happen with Elton Brand, but I think he is in a situation where at least he's still there. Oh, everything all right over there? Okay. Well, I was breaking into because you might need somebody to come through. But I guess Elton Brand's in a good position. He's in a good position where he's got people around him with some experience, and maybe that's something he needed as a GM when he first came in, people that he can learn from. And maybe this will put him in a position to then leave the organization and get a job elsewhere and be able to run a team. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason, because also you look at Daryl Morey and the team that he left. He left the Houston Rockets, and now you're hearing all these stories about how the players that he left aren't. Now you're hearing James Harden wants out. Now you're hearing
no, you're hearing Westbrook wants out. Reportedly, Harden wants to stay at this point.
Oh, well, I heard he wants out, but you know what? I took a nap this afternoon. Things could have changed. So Harden wants to stay. Westbrook wants out. You and I, we both live here in Philly. And you know how fan speak goes in this city. Whereas it does not matter the actual caliber of the player, the style of the player, but when a player either becomes available, hopes to become available, there are fans in this town that no matter what the situation is, let's go get them.
All right, now let me be clear.
Okay. Please be clear.
If it's a situation where, because he's asking out of Houston, the ability of the Rockets to demand top dollar, as it were, in return in a trade is diminished, and you can do it for, say, Al Horford and Josh Richardson, which would and give Houston the big man that they need, and another perimeter player to go to pair with Harden. That I might consider. Now, if you're asking me if I wanted Westbrook in exchange for either of the two key pieces of the roster, being Embiid or Simmons, no, I won't touch it.
So you're not giving up Embiid or Simmons for Russell Westbrook.
No.
Okay. Would you give up Embiid or Simmons for James Harden? Granted,
I'd be reluctant to, but I'd consider it. I'd have to at least consider it.
Okay.
But I would be reluctant to do it.
Who would you be more comfortable letting go in acquiring a James Harden? I mean,
in acquiring specifically James Harden,
yes,
I would be more comfortable letting Ben Simmons go.
Okay. Would that change Russell Westbrook? Like if it was, well, you said you wouldn't give up Embiid or Simmons.
I wouldn't give up either for Russell Westbrook.
Okay.
No. I wouldn't really want to give up either for Harden. I really wouldn't.
Well, look, we know you. I know you. I know your list of hateable guards.
Mm-hmm. Harden's actually not on that list.
He's flirted with that list before.
He's flirted with it several times, but he's not actually on the list.
Has he been on that list at one point in time before? Okay. He's just flirted with the list.
Mm-hmm. Now, what you will hear me say is that I don't like Harden playing full-time point guard.
Okay. Well, agree. Well, I would think
I'll never go as far as to say Harden's a guy you can't win with, because he's very capable of playing off the ball if you put him in a proper system rather than that stuff D'Antoni runs.
Yeah. I think, honestly, and both Harden and Westbrook are guards that this team could use in situations where they're not your full-time point guard. Like you said, you know, because I have said, like, the Sixers need, you and I have disagreed on this because I feel like the Sixers need a 2, and you've said you think the Sixers need a 1.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they need a real 1. I think they need a 2 as well, but I think they need a real 1.
But we've disagreed over what we feel is what position would be the most important. I feel like the priority should be strengthening their 2-guard position, where you feel like the priority should be strengthening the 1. I feel like both Harden and Westbrook kind of address that in one player, in the sense that you would not need them to be your full-time point guard, but when in a rush, when in situations where you have matchup advantages, where you can take Ben Simmons and put him down on the block and post him up, you now have a capable point guard you can run your offense through. Whereas most of the time, you'll have Ben Simmons bringing the ball up. Most of the time, you'll have Ben Simmons running your offense. Or if you want to commit to putting Ben Simmons at the 4 full time, if you're giving up Josh Richardson, that means you still got Shake Milton on the team.
So he's not playing.
You don't think
why would he be playing? If I move Josh Richardson, that means Thybulle steps up in the lineup.
I think if you move Josh Richardson, aren't you going to put either Harden or Westbrook in the lineup? At the 2?
Most likely. Yeah. At that point, I keep Simmons at the 1 at that point.
Okay. So
that's not me putting Shake Milton in the lineup.
Okay. Well, so we're on the same page. I'm thinking you make this move for Westbrook, and I'm taking the trade that you proposed. You're sending Josh Richardson and Al Horford for either Harden or Westbrook. Well, you know, we'll say, just for conversation's sake right now, we'll say Westbrook. We've traded Al Horford. We've traded Josh Richardson. We now have Russell Westbrook. Morey brings in Westbrook, sits him down with Embiid. They shake hands. Everybody's cool now. They don't hate each other no more. They're on the same page. They good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Nah. Well, you know that. I'll come back to that. We'll circle back to that. That's a good enough point. But I'm thinking Shake Milton at the 1, Westbrook at the 2, Tobias at the 3, Ben at the 4, JoJo at the 5. You're thinking hard. I see the wheels turning. Because to your point, I understand the thought process of saying, okay, Ben is still your primary is still your primary ball handler, but you have Westbrook at the 1, Thibault at the 2, Tobias at the 3, Ben at the 4 as your point forward, and Ben at JoJo at the 5. Is that what you envisioned? Is that what you saw?
No.
Okay.
All right. Assuming you bring in, all right, let's say you were able to bring in a Westbrook.
Okay.
And you had Westbrook on the roster and you were able to keep Simmons and Embiid.
Okay.
At that point, what you have is offensively, let's be clear, offensively, Ben is playing the 1. Your wings are split between Thibault and Harden. Tobias at the 4 and Embiid at the 5. Now, on defensively, Ben is probably guarding your 3, and Harden and Thibault are guarding your 1 and 2, pretty much interchangeably. So that would be more of what I'd be looking at. But Ben would be my point.
Ben, okay, let's one more time.
All right.
Shake
Milton. Let's be clear about him. He's a nice little player.
Mm-hmm.
He can make shots. He's at this point in his career, he's not a playmaker at the NBA level.
Okay.
And he's not a knockdown shooter kind of guy. Mm-hmm. He can make shots, but he's not like you give him the ball, Shake is good from there type guy. And he's not a shutdown defender. So at this point in his career, I don't want Shake as a starter. You toyed with the idea last year because when you looked at the roster, beyond Ben Simmons, there were no other playmakers on the roster. You had none. So you had to look for alternatives to being able to start your offense.
You had to find offense.
Mm-hmm. But if you still have Ben, and if you still have, and then you bring in a Harden or Westbrook, you have someone else who can create play. Mm-hmm. Whether or not I'm fond of that guy or he's my favorite player is irrelevant at that point. You have someone else who is able to trigger the offense effectively, which is something you did not have the last several years, honestly. Mm-hmm. So that's more of what I'm looking at. Shake he's not a starter right now at the NBA level.
No, understood. And I think Thibault has improved, and he's improved, and I think he played well enough in the bubble to make me wonder how he will react to more playing time and more playing time out of the bubble. I want to see now what he does in a full, now that it's going to be 72 games, full 72 game season. You know, having to go on the road, having to play inside, Wells Fargo. That interests me. So I
say, like a guy like Shake, though, for me, I would have expected Shake to overachieve in the bubble rather than be. I think, in my opinion, Shake had a disappointing appearance in the bubble, and he was a guy who should have been able to overachieve without the presence of it, without the presence of a crowd to be intimidated or nervous. Shake, I can work with him off the bench, but I'm looking more at developing Thibault to be a starter if possible. Keep Ben as the primary ball handler at this point. You do need another playmaker on the roster, but unless you're looking to go out and get a real high level point guard, Ben is still your point guard.
Exactly. I mean, and I don't mind Ben Simmons handling the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Ben Simmons is a bad facilitator. I mean, honestly, that's the one thing he gets to the basket. He can get you buckets at the basket. Yes, I understand he won't shoot jumpers, but look, that's unfortunately
that's something he's going to have to do. He's going to have to do it, period.
Do you think that this is the best situation to, like, at this point now, you now have a new head coach, you got a pretty much new front office.
Mm-hmm.
The GM that drafted you is gone. The guy that replaced the GM that drafted you now has a new boss. I got to think, like, if you're not shooting jumpers now, if this isn't a situation where, if it doesn't tell you, hey, you got to do this now. I don't know what your hang up is. I don't know what it is inside your mind is telling you, hey, I don't need to do this, but it's now or never. And if he's not going to do this now it might be time to start looking for a change of scenery.
I mean, it is now or never, but it's one of those things where it's not really a matter of good situation, bad situation, at least not in my opinion. It's an internal thing.
What do you mean, internal, like in his mind, or internal like within the
in his mind?
Okay.
In his mind. And it's independent of what's going on around him. This is just fundamental basketball. You're open, you got to shoot.
Mm-hmm. And they're leaving you open.
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. Like, not like you have a little bit of space to get the look off. That's like something you do if you're a knockdown guy. I mean, if they're leaving you open, daring you to shoot, you got to shoot it. Period. You got to.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't take that shot, I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to make it in the league. I was about to say not as a guard, but really as anything other than a center in today's NBA, you're not going to make it unless if you're not willing to take an open shot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something we have to see. And I think he knows that. I think everybody knows that at this point.
I understand why you would assume he knows that. But the fact remains that now was he going into year number 3? No, this is year number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Year number 4, and it's not a given that he will come in and shoot jumpers. That does that sit well with you? I mean,
no, of course not. That would never sit well. That'll never sit well with me.
Well, I know shooters not shooting will never sit well with you. I understand that because I've heard the stories of you as a basketball player. Shooters not shooting is never going to be something that's cool with Mike Jones.
You got to take the shot.
You got.
As much as I don't want my point guard to come down looking for his own shot first. He does have to be able to execute the offense, and part of that is being able to keep the defense spread, once the ball starts rotating, when it rotates back to you, if you're the open man, you got to make the shot just like everybody else.
He talks about he not wanting his point guard to just come down the court and look for shots, as we also talk about the possibility of bringing in Russell Westbrook and James Harden.
What was the first thing I said about either of them?
No,
I don't want them playing the point.
Understand?
I'm keeping Ben at the point because Ben is a pass first player.
Ben is a pass first player, and I think honestly, both Harden and Westbrook move well without the ball, and that's what this team needs. Honestly, they have not had a guard who moves without the ball since Iverson.
Not true.
Oh, okay.
JJ Redick was an excellent at
Okay,
moving
you know what?
without the ball.
All right, he could move without.
Problem with him was once the ball was in his hands, it's either a jump shot or he's giving it up because he's not a guy who can put the ball on the floor to create a play at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the strength of JJ Redick's game. So,
which Iverson could do both. So JJ Redick moved well without the ball.
mm-hmm.
To your point, that's an over. I'll give you that. But they haven't had the level of Iverson since Iverson. But not everybody can be Allen Iverson.
I mean, there are very few people that have the talent of Allen Iverson, so that's not a stretch to say.
My man here, with the, as I bring up the drip that the Sixers gave me for being a great podcast because they wouldn't give me the new jerseys.
Oh man!
So you really weren't feeling them new jerseys, huh?
They were.
Was it the fact that they put Boathouse Row on the jerseys that you were like,
And I've heard that some people say they bothered them. It wasn't that bothered me at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, what is it? It doesn't look like a Sixers jersey.
Mm-hmm.
From a distance, when I first saw it, it kind of reminded me like a Nuggets or Clippers jersey.
I thought that too.
It just doesn't feel like a Sixers jersey.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is to me.
I definitely thought that. It's like this. When I saw it, I was underwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I was underwhelmed, and I thought it was underwhelming. Like I said, what got me was the whole, and it makes it interesting because what got me was the marketing. When I saw everyone getting the free jerseys, that's when I was like, all right, you know what? Hold up. Maybe this isn't that bad. But it's also, you remember when the Flyers first announced Gritty?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in the city was like, ew, like, what is that? Like, this is crazy. This is stupid. Well, people like now, because Gritty is so beloved in this city, people don't even want to admit that when the Flyers first announced Gritty, everybody in the city was against it. And it wasn't until the national media started really, hammering Gritty that everyone in Philly was like, whoa, like, hey, he's ours.
I mean, Philly is always going to do that. We can bash us, but you can't.
Yeah, and I think that was the whole thing with this uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were all down on it, and then when national media people started saying, like, what is this? Like, they look like the Nuggets. Like do people? I guess like one question that I had heard was, do people outside of Philly necessarily know what Boathouse Row is? If you're outside of, like, of course,
well, I mean,
I'd
have to. Well, I answer that question. I'd have to say yes. You watch any national broadcast of a game, you see a couple things from Philly every time.
Yeah,
City Hall, Liberty Bell, a cheesesteak, and Boathouse Row. It is one of those sites that you do associate with Philly.
I'm glad they put cheesesteak on the jerseys, though.
But it just like the look, and it's not even that it has Boathouse Row. It's just the look of the jersey doesn't feel like a Sixers jersey to me. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of these jerseys. That being said, let's take a quick break.
All right.
And we'll get back into it on the other side.
All right, we'll be right back right here on Jonesy and Brown. He's Mike Jones. I'm John Brown. We'll be right back. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's jump back into it. All right, we are back on Jonesy and Brown. What is going on? He is Mike Jones. I am John Brown. Remember, you can listen to this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. I'm talking about Anchor. I'm talking about Spotify. I'm talking about SoundCloud, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever. Just search Best in the World Sports. We're also part of the Lance J Radio Show. That's when does our show come on? Lance J Radio?
Well, let's see. You got actually Monday through Thursday on Plug TV now, 9 p.m.
Are we on TV now?
Monday through Thursday, Plug TV, 9 p.m. Lance J Show.
Okay.
You can check that then, and then all the normal internet affiliates on the weekends. Yeah. It's too many for me to try to remember all the times.
We large like that. We got so many internet affiliates. We ain't got time to name them all. Just look for the show, download the podcast, subscribe wherever. And remember, you can hit us up at Jonesy and Brown on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Yes, we are finally on all platforms of social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Jonesy and Brown. All right, where'd you want to go next with this? Where are we going now? I will follow your lead, Jones.
Well, all right. Well, so
I asked because I didn't ask you during the break where you wanted to go with that. So now
I know, and that's not the problem. I know where I want to go.
Okay,
but it makes me sad every time we start talking football right now.
Why does it make you sad?
Because my team stinks.
Your team does stink, but your team is in first place, man. That's
not a good thing.
That's
not a good thing.
Lining to this really dark. Why is it not a good thing? Why is first place?
If the team were good, if the team were competitive, then being in first place is a good thing because you have a chance to go somewhere. If you're a bad team in first place, you're just making your draft pick worse with no chance of going anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
I want one or the other. Be good or be bad.
Well, look, they're bad.
Being a bad first place team is just like being in limbo. You remember the Iguodala years with the Sixers where you were guaranteed a 6-7 seed every year, and that was it?
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
But this is, in my opinion, this is what makes it different. This is what makes football different from basketball. Whereas you can find quality pieces later on in the draft, where in the NFL draft, where you might not find them in the NBA draft. You get a pick outside the lottery in the NBA. You know what? You're getting a role player. You're getting somebody. You're getting somebody who probably won't finish out their rookie deal with you.
Very likely, yeah. That's what you're going to get. What's going to happen?
You're going to get a middle of the road player. Maybe they'll play some decent minutes. They definitely will not come in and start. I believe in the NFL, no matter where you draft, your first round, your second round, and possibly your third round pick should be players that you expect to start on day one.
First round, definitely.
First round, definitely. Second round, I think your second round pick should.
Second round, probably.
No,
depends on the position.
If you can't, like,
probably.
If you might have a better option on your team, but I think your second round pick should be someone in the conversation. Like if you
he's definitely in the rotation. You're a regular piece of the game plan if you're a second round pick.
Like let's take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Miles Sanders was a second round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
When you drafted him, you had Josh Howard. So of course Josh Howard was your number one running back going into the season. However, if you were taking a look, had they went with Miles Sanders as their starter, I probably wouldn't have had a problem with that.
Okay. Let me ask you this though. Like, say a team drafts a cornerback in the second round.
Corner, okay.
If somebody takes a corner and he ends up being the third or fourth corner in the depth chart early in the year as a second round pick, that's not a surprise to you at all. He's getting on the field, he's playing snaps, getting some snaps in the nickel and dime, or as a backup on the outside when somebody needs a break. But so they're consistently on the field, but they're not technically a starter. I'm okay with that out of the second rounder.
I'm okay.
It depends on the position.
But I think like if you were like say, but that goes to what I had said, what I just said, if you have a better option at the time,
mm-hmm.
ease him into the lineup. Okay, that I understand. But the fact remains that if you needed him to start, if you had no better option, you could go with him. Like if you drafted DB in the second round, you got better DBs on your team right now, but you're looking to move on from them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You bring them in, you bring them in, you ease your guy into the starting lineup. But say that guy gets hurt week one. Say that guy gets hurt.
And that's what I mean. If I hear a second round wide receiver or second round DB, I don't necessarily think starter. I think competent player who should be able to step in if they need to and everything doesn't fall apart. But I don't necessarily think somebody who's ready to start. Now, 2-3 years from now, I absolutely think they should be ready to develop into a starter. You should be a potential starter, but not necessarily a day one starter. I'll put it that way.
I would hope that you have players good enough to be in the conversation of week one contributors.
Contributor, absolutely.
Your first, second, and possibly your third should be week one contributors, if not starters. Starters is the top. Contributors
starters best case scenario, but you should absolutely be a contributor if you're a top 3 round pick.
No projects in the first round, second round, or third round.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to hear about your project. I don't want to hear about somebody you got to develop into a position. No guards that you hope will be tackles.
Mm-mm.
No safeties that you hope could be cornerbacks. No linemen that you hope could be linebackers. Week one, the position, if you are drafting a player in the first round, the second round, and the third round, they should be able to play the position that they play. The position that you drafted them in week one they should be on the field. I don't want to see unless you have, and I think the exception would be if you have a starting quarterback. We'll talk about the quarterback position. If you have a bona fide starting quarterback, then okay, and you want to ease, you draft for the future, like look Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. That I would understand. Top 5, if you draft. In fact, I'll put it to you like this: if you draft a quarterback outside of the top 5, I don't mind if he's not starting week 1. You draft a quarterback week 1. You draft a quarterback number 1. They should be in your starting lineup week 1.
I disagree.
Okay, why?
That I disagree with. Honestly, best case scenario, you draft a quarterback. Best case scenario, he doesn't start till year 2, or at least halfway through year 1.
Okay.
ideally you want him to have a time to get comfortable with the speed of the game before you have to throw him out there. And if you look through the history of guys who had an opportunity to sit for a little bit of time before they got to play, it tends to bode well for them, from Aaron Rodgers all the way up to most recently a Patrick Mahomes. None of these guys got thrown immediately into the fire, so they had a chance to get used to seeing what things look like at field level in an NFL game before they got a chance to see how close those windows close and how DBs are able to track things down, how receivers are able to run their routes. They have some sort of point of reference to go by rather than just saying, oh, yeah, I was able to do this in college against a lot of guys who played football for the last time in college. They're never going to play again.
Yeah.
So that's the one position that you could be drafted number 1 overall, and I'm still quite comfortable with you sitting your entire first year.
I am not opposed to that. However, I think, like, you can't deny that Aaron Rodgers benefited from being able to sit back and watch Brett Favre for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, you look at the player that, Brett Favre was like the Cal Ripken of football. He wasn't coming off the field. So Aaron Rodgers had the best seat in the house for what, 3 whole seasons.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, but I think, and Aaron Rodgers was also drafted towards the end. Towards the end.
He was a first round pick. He was a first round pick, and let's be honest, there were a lot of people who thought he was going to go earlier in that first round.
He definitely.
And if you could go back and do it all over again, I guarantee you he goes before Alex Smith.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I guarantee you he goes before Alex Smith if you could do it all over again.
I think the quarterback position, where I think, honestly, and I'll put it to you like this: there's no denying that Aaron Rodgers benefited from sitting.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback position is a position where you can benefit from sitting. However, I'm not necessarily convinced that Brett Favre would have been a failure. Excuse me, not Brett Favre. Excuse me, Aaron Rodgers would have been a failure if he was thrown in from the jump.
Oh, I'm not saying that at all. I just am of the belief that if you have someone, even they don't have to be good, competent, serviceable, let them start for the first 6 to 8 games before you throw the rookie out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Donovan McNabb, one of the best things that happened to him was he got to sit behind Doug Peterson for a few weeks before he was thrown into the fray.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely benefited from being able to sit back and watch. But I think, but had he, it might have taken him a little bit longer to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a good enough quarterback that if he was asked to start week 1.
And now, the one thing you do have to worry about is potential David Carrs.
Yeah.
Not Derek Carr of the Raiders, but David Carr of the Houston Texans. By all accounts, a highly talented kid, but he got thrown out there as a rookie. He wasn't quite ready, and the team around him, as most number 1 picks usually fall into a situation, is bad. You go out there, you take a beating, and your confidence is shaking. You're never the same again. That's the potential harm of throwing a kid out there too soon, is that you shatter his confidence. And from that point on, he's got those happy feet or that extra half tick of hesitation that ruins everything. At that high level of the game, you can't hesitate. You can't be unsure. You've got to be ready to go. So if I can avoid putting the quarterback's confidence at risk, I will.
So that being said, to the point that we're talking about, you need to be if you can sit, you can sit, especially with the quarterback position. If you can eat them in, but I still think it is a safe assumption. It is a safe expectation that when you draft a player, in you're talking first round.
I'll say it this way: if I get a top 3 pick, I'm expecting you to be able to be a starter before your rookie deal is up.
Okay, and I understand. Me, if I'm thinking, if you draft somebody in a third.
Probably after at least year 2, going into year 3, I think you should be ready to start.
You draft somebody
sure.
3, I'm expecting you to be a starter week 1. Unless I just got a beast at that position already. And if you in a situation where if you in a situation where you have a top 3 pick and you can draft somebody behind,
Oh, well, what I said was top 3 rounds. But if you're talking,
okay.
But if you're talking top 3, like picks 1, 2, and 3, outside of quarterback, I absolutely expect you to be a day 1 starter if you're a top 3 pick.
Okay, I misunderstood you then. I thought you were talking
top 3. But no, I was saying if you're picked in the top 3 rounds, then I expect you to be able to be a potential starter within the next couple years.
Okay,
that's my realistic expectation.
Okay, all right. Well, don't. I think we're closer to the same page. You say by the end of your rookie deal. I think it should be before that. I think you should have
probably before then, but
you should be if you're a top 3 pick, if you're a top 3 round pick, I believe that by the end of your rookie deal, you should be looking to get broke off. At that point now, by the time your rookie deal is in, by the time your rookie deal is done, you should be looking to get paid.
But I'm not. I don't think I need you to be a superstar. Try to think. Who's a good example? Let's say Nelson Aguilar had been able to catch.
Okay.
Based on what you saw, you would have had a decent receiver, not a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Him being who he is, no faster, not like a guy, not turning him into a guy who goes up at high points, anything like that. Just able to hold on to the balls that are in his hands. He doesn't drop passes.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, he's a solid receiver. He's not a superstar guy.
Well, I think, and
I'm okay with that
for Nelson now, because I hear there are a lot of people who watch Nelson in this city now, see what he's doing with Oakland, and want to kind of use that to needle the Eagles.
What he's doing in Oakland isn't much different than what he did in Philly in 2017. Actually, 2017 in Philly was a very good season for him. He just couldn't maintain it thereafter.
But I think he is a decent player in Oakland. He is a decent player in Oakland. He's not their number 1 wide receiver, but he makes plays when you need him to. But I feel like given where the Eagles drafted him, now that he's on his 2nd deal, I think the expectations are different in Oakland.
Absolutely.
He is playing to the level. He is playing to their expectations in Oakland.
Philly was expecting a 1st round receiver.
You drafted him in the 1st round. You're thinking a receiver that you draft in the 1st round, you think could be your number 1 wide receiver.
Yes.
There's
a 1st round wide receiver should be able to turn into a number 1 wide receiver.
Exactly. And there's not even as well as he's playing in Oakland. As he's playing well. He's having a decent season. Nobody in Oakland thinks Nelson Aguilar is their number 1 wide receiver. It's not even a conversation. So to me, it's like, yeah, you know what? That's great what he is in Oakland. I don't need that here. I don't need Oakland Nelson. Well, we could use
all right.
receiver help.
let's look at it this way. Let's go back to 2017 Philadelphia's Eagles season.
Yes.
With what you were getting out of Aguilar that year, that season in particular, were you disappointed with his production?
2017?
In 2017.
No. Well,
he was not a number one receiver that year.
He was not a number one wide receiver then, but we still
that year. If you're looking at Aguilar, he was probably the most talented number 3 receiver in the league.
Okay.
As a first round pick.
2017 though, Nelson Aguilar had a pretty crappy 2016. Remember he was benched.
And
he was looking like a bust. He was looking like he was, he was looking like he was on the bus. He was just a straight up bust, waste of a draft pick, and another just painful reminder of that coach that came before Doug that you don't like to mention on this show. Because it's your birthday, I won't say that man's name. But
we don't say that name.
Oh, we're not going to say that name.
No, we don't say that name.
Oh, because it's your birthday, I'm not even going to push that issue. But I think 2017, you had Alshon Jeffrey, who was a clear number 1 wide receiver.
He was the number 1 that year.
You had Torrey Smith, who had a couple years removed from a Super Bowl, who was a good enough number, a clear number 2 wide receiver. So I think
that has the speed left, a legitimate deep threat.
So I believe that made the decision to put that made that made Nelson Aguilar as your number 3 wide receiver a little, an easier pill to swallow. You would have wanted Nelson Aguilar to at least play at a level where you could expect him to be a number 1 wide receiver. But you had that 2017 team had guys who were clear number 1 and number 2. So it's like that made
but all I'm saying is that at that point, nobody felt like Nelson Aguilar was a disappointment. You felt like you were finally getting your money's worth out of that draft pick in 2017. And that was with him playing in the slot.
I will say that not a disappointment, but there's a context to that comment. You were happy with the production you were getting out of Nelson Aguilar in 2017 because you had 2 better wide receivers on the team. That made what you got from Nelson Aguilar because essentially when you had Smith and when you had Jeffrey both playing healthy, that allowed Aguilar to play to his strength, which was in the slot. That was his strength. However, and he played it well. So that made, you were good with Nelson. However,
at no point in Nelson's career would I think that his issues were his route running or getting separation, getting open. No, he just dropped the ball.
Yeah, he couldn't catch the ball. But I think I will put it to you like this. It's like you expect a number 1 wide receiver to play at a high level, whether you're playing to their strengths or not. And so you were happy with the production that you got from Nelson Aguilar in 2017 because you had a decent number 1 and a decent number 2. But I don't think it necessarily escaped you that, hey, you know what? You've now lowered the bar for a guy that you drafted in the first round a couple of years ago. But it's like but the level of production you got out of Jeffrey and Smith made you complain about Nelson less. You were
Mhm.
good with what Nelson gave you.
But I think honestly, if Nelson had maintained his 2017 level and been a very good slot receiver, and Alshon goes through the same everything else he goes through, and Torrey Smith is gone, you have trouble replacing him, Mike Wallace breaks a leg, and then things like that continue to happen. I think you still are okay with Nelson Aguilar if he continually produced at the 2017 level. I don't think you feel like that's a bust or a wasted pick. Especially in today's NFL, your third receiver, your slot receiver is on the field a lot. So while you're not a starter, you're a solid contributor. You are somebody who the team expects to be able to count on to consistently produce every week, week in and week out. So I think if you get that out of a guy who's drafted in the first round, like I said, it depends on position whether or not I'll go starter. But I think we agree that top 3 rounds definitely, first round absolutely. I need you to be at least a solid contributor from the first round. Absolutely, first 3 rounds I need you to contribute even as a rookie. First round, I'm hoping you have the ability to at least fill in for a starter if you have to. Some teams, I might be in a situation where, yeah, you just have to start. But I'm hoping you would at least have the ability to be a future starter, potential starter if need be, with the exception of quarterback, who ideally can always sit down and wait a year for me. If I can have my druthers, if I can have my choice of how it happens, my quarterback always sits. But that's just me.
I understand. And to me, once again, I just feel like quarterback, yeah, ideally you'd like him to sit, but I think I should be able to at least expect him, if need be, to step in week 1. But essentially, I want my round my round 1, my round 2, and my round 3 to be able to be week 1 contributors.
Mm-hmm.
Not projects. I feel that's what has failed the Philadelphia Eagles over the last couple of years. Well, the Eagles had just had jacked up drafts all over the place. We're not even talking about their first, second, and third round picks. We're talking fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round picks. That's where there's failure up and down the board when it comes to the Eagles.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take another quick break though, and then when we get back, I got a question I want to throw at you real quick.
Okay. All right. Devin, we can do that. I got time, man. I got time. All right. We'll be right back on Jonesy and Brown. He's Mike Jones. I'm John Brown. We'll be right back. All right, you ready?
1 second.
Okay. Are you ready now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We are back on Jonesy and Brown. That is Mike Jones. I am John Brown. Remember, you can hit us up Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Jonesy and Brown. Jonesy and Brown. Talk to us. Send us messages. Let us know if you're feeling this podcast. Shout out to my man Sonny Sun from Chester, Pennsylvania, the founder of Feedback the magazine. He's been dropping comments all over the place. I don't mean to ignore you. He pointed out he asked some questions. Talked about Matisse Thybulle being in his starting lineup. Also asked about Lou Williams as a guy that moved without the basketball. He also brought up the fact that Draymond Green was drafted in the second round. I think Draymond Green is an exception, not an example. I think bottom line is, if you're in the NBA, if you're drafted in the lottery, you're expected to be a starter. Anything past the lottery, yeah, you got drafted. If you're a first round pick, but you weren't a lottery pick, you're a role player. We also talked last segment about projects. Sonny brought up Danny Watkins. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
That might be one of the top 5 worst draft picks in Philly history. Not just the Eagles. That was like one of the worst draft picks of my lifetime. And that might be a show we do down the line, like the worst draft picks of our lives. Danny Watkins. Sean
That's
Bradley.
a pretty bad one.
That
is a pretty bad one. Like Danny Watkins.
That was a dude, like, for real. Like, especially when you read his backstory, dude didn't even want to play football. That was how you draft a guy in the first round who doesn't want to play football. Meanwhile, they found Jordan Mailata, who never played football, and now he's a decent left tackle. But you drafted somebody in the first round didn't want to play football.
Mm-hmm.
That's another show for another time. You said you had a question for me.
I did.
All right.
I posted something on social media earlier today, or actually last night, and got some interesting responses. So I wanted to throw it out at you. You've heard me several times talk about guys who I thought were some of the most overrated in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
This was to the other end, on the other end of the spectrum, with a guy I think is the most underrated in NBA history. So what I want to know is what are your first thoughts when I say this statement, when I make this statement? The most underrated player in NBA history is Scottie Pippen.
You, Mr. Jones, you are truly a fan of nuance. You are truly a fan of nuance in sports debate. And let me explain to you why. I think, and I saw your Facebook. I saw the post.
Mm-hmm.
Did not comment because I know you. I know you. I know how you operate. I know how you like to set these traps for people. And you got friends and they just dove right in. And here's the thing. You're over here debating people, and I know you've known them longer than you've known me. But even I knew what was going on, and I'm like, nope. I saw the post, and I'm like, nah, bruh.
I mean, for real, it felt like people were making my argument for me.
I know that. So when you made the comment, I'm sitting like, no. let me tell you, it's like I got a question for you. Who has 2 thumbs and won't be falling for this trap? That will be this guy. I'm sitting here watching you debate people you've known since high school, and I'm sitting there like, come on, y'all didn't see this coming. But I think that the question that you asked leads itself to a lot of surface answers.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think on the surface, when you look at Scottie Pippen, when you look at his career, it is very easy. It's very easy to say, well, he played alongside Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan made him better. Michael Jordan, and look, I also know that you like to straddle that line between real basketball fan and Jordan sycophant. You might not admit it, but you straddle that line. You play the line a lot closer than you give yourself credit for, but it's okay. The Jordan sycophant will be like, all right, Scottie was a bum, but Jordan was so great that he made Scottie just look like the second greatest player of all time. That's what the Jordan sycophant will say. The sycophant will be like, Scottie was trash, but because they didn't win the championship the one year that he played with Chicago without Michael Jordan. But be clear, Scottie Pippen you could easily put Scottie Pippen in an argument for who was the best player in the NBA that first season Michael Jordan was retired.
Like when that Bulls team, it was in their prime during their two three-peats. Mm-hmm. For a large stretch of that, Scottie Pippen was widely considered the second best player all around in the league.
Yeah.
Now here's my thing. Looking back, I'm gonna throw some names at you.
Okay.
If you're ranking all-time greats, who do you have higher, Gary Payton or Scottie Pippen?
Now that's a question you could have started with. Oh man!
All right, Reggie Miller or Scottie Pippen?
I put Scottie over Reggie.
You would. A lot of people might rate Reggie over Scottie based on reputation. When they were playing and both in their prime, Scottie's the one who was the second best player in the league. Reggie was a great scorer. Scottie did everything.
Yeah. Yes, great scorer, great defender.
Mm-hmm. Ran the offense.
Yeah,
rebounded.
Could hit a jumper if you needed to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want Reggie could shoot the lights out. Of course. Mm-hmm. Scottie was never going to shoot the lights out of the building. But if you needed a jumper if you needed a clutch jumper, Scottie would hit that clutch jumper.
Oh, Scottie's been known to give people 40 in a game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Scottie was I think honestly, probably more than Dream played out of his mind in 94, 95.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we're talking 93, 94.
No, yeah, 93, 94, 94, 95.
Yeah, 90. But
Dream played out of his mind. Both
Dream played out of his mind. And that is another, another caveat to that, because it's like, okay, Scottie didn't win an MVP, but you could put Scottie in the MVP category, 93,
Absolutely.
94,
and 94, 95. Mm-hmm. Both those years.
But Dream was just a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Dream was an absolute beast, and it's like that gets lost on it because and that's another that's a debate for another time. Because
and let's be clear, people say, well, he didn't win without Jordan. He had Pete Myers, a mentally fragile Horace Grant for one of the years.
Why you gotta throw that shade at Horace Grant?
Who else we got on these teams? Like nobody that's an all-star. Tony Kukoc was in his first year in the NBA. He's a neophyte to the league. He's talented, turned into a solid 6-man, but he never turned into a star in the league. He was a solid player. But this is the team Scottie's working with, and they won 55 games.
55 games, 22 points a game. Let's see, 9 rebounds a game, 6 assists, 20. That's what he's giving you.
He's giving you everything.
22, 6, and 9.
And then he's leading the league in steals and blocks too.
Exactly. 3 steals, a block a game. 22 points, a block, 3 steals, 6 assists, and 9 rebounds a game.
On a 55-win team. This is an amazing performance.
On a 55-win team. The reason he wasn't MVP because Dream, one of the greatest centers of all time, had one of the greatest center seasons of all time.
Exactly.
So, but like I said, the point that I'm making is, it's easy to say, oh, Michael Jordan made Scottie Pippen, but don't sleep on what Scottie Pippen had done. And yes, it was a short sample size because Jordan was back the end of the next season. And honestly, by the time Scottie left Chicago, where did he go? He goes to
Portland and Houston.
No, he goes to
Houston to Portland.
He goes to Houston first, where they already had Dream and they had Charles. But he's on.
And you have Drexler, but that whole team is aging. The guys are all past their prime.
Well, Drexler was gone.
That's right. Drexler was gone. Barkley's body was breaking down.
And by
Dream, Dream is older. And then, honestly, Pep's not a spring chicken at this point. He's been known to have back problems at this point.
Yeah.
So
he was 33. He was 33 years old.
Past his basketball prime.
And he had, a 33-year-old forward with back problems. So he goes to Houston. Yeah, he goes to Houston. His numbers drop off. Not only because he's the number 2 option in Chicago behind Jordan. He goes to Houston and he's the number 3 option behind Dream and Barkley. He goes to Portland. Now when he goes to Portland, he's then a role player. At that point in Portland, he's a role player.
He's well past his basketball prime by the time he's in Portland.
Yeah, but nonetheless, underrated. Okay,
and he was still a very effective player in Portland.
Because I think when people hear the word underrated, I think they naturally think like an unknown player. Like I don't think people think a player the caliber of Scottie Pippen, where everyone is familiar with him. The body of work is there for everyone to see. I don't think you necessarily wouldn't necessarily use a term like underrated for Scottie Pippen. Like an example I would give is, I think Ron Harper was underrated. Because I believe a lot of people think of him as the role player in that second Bulls 3-peat.
In the second 3-peat, and not the young Ron Harper before the knee injury of Cleveland.
Yeah. The Cleveland Clippers Ron Harper. I remember having a conversation with somebody, and when people were talking about Michael Jordan and the job that he did in lifting up that Bulls team, I'm like, Ron Harper was a 20-point game. Was a 20-point a game scorer.
Oh, yeah, Ron Harper was a ball player.
Yeah, it's like Ron Harper would give you buckets. But you think of him with the Bulls as a role player. You think of him with the Lakers as a role player. Before Ron Harper got hurt, when Ron Harper was in Cleveland, when Ron Harper was with the Clippers, Ron Harper would give you buckets. And then the guy I had this conversation with then goes back and looks up Ron Harper, and then comes back to me. He's like, "Oh my!" Like, I didn't realize that. Like, he's like, "Yo, you were right. Ron Harper was a beast."
Yeah, he's a ball player.
But to your point, yes, I would say Scottie Pippen's underrated. I'm not sure if I would say the most underrated player of all time.
Who would you have ahead of him on that list?
I don't know. I told you I was avoiding this conversation. I wasn't trying to fall into that trap. All I'm saying, I don't know if I would say.
I'm gonna bring the smoke to you.
I understand, and usually not. Look, I'm the one usually trying to convince you to give somebody some smoke. But
hey, it's my birthday.
That is true, man. That is true. That's why I'm gonna save this Michelob Ultra for you there, bro. This Michelob Ultra might as well be bottled water, but but nonetheless, I do believe Scottie Pippen is underrated. Not quite sure I would call him the most underrated of all time, but yeah, I think playing with Jordan, I think puts a unfair context on his career.
Exactly, I agree completely. Like the fact that he played with someone as great as Mike, we don't take into account the fact that Mike played with someone as great as Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have to diminish either one's greatness to do that.
No.
To do that. That's why that team is often thought of as the greatest team of all time. You had the two best players in the league in their prime at the same time on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
That is a hard thing to contend with.
I think so too, and then plus, and especially with that second three-peat, where you had the greatest player, you had the greatest of all time, probably had the greatest athlete in the NBA at the time, in Pippen. You had Dennis Rodman, who was probably the greatest one of the greatest positional players, a true, pure power forward.
Defense, rebound, good decision maker, lots of hustle.
Yes, and because he was somebody who could pass from the forward position.
Oh, excellent passer.
He passed from the forward position. He was somebody who would battle for rebounds and find shooters. That's what you need a power forward to do. He didn't care about his points, didn't care about his point total. He knew that, hey, Michael Jordan likes to score the ball. Let me get this rebound and get Michael Jordan the ball. Scottie Pippen can run the floor. Let me get this rebound, get the ball out to Scottie so he can run the floor. And then all I'm going to do is sit back and collect these rings.
Oh, yeah. Robin was a basketball genius. Let's not get confused.
Yeah, exactly. And he spoke the international language of sports.
Hustle,
winning,
heart. He was a winner. Yeah.
That's the international language. That should be the language everyone can speak. If you're a sportsman, if you're an athlete, what language? Those are the words everybody knows. I know how to win.
Exactly. I make winning plays.
Like, look, I can come out here with this crazy hair. I can wear these dresses, but when it comes time to win, I'm down.
To make winning plays.
Yeah, I'm down for winning. That's who Dennis Rodman was. That was the language that Phil Jackson needed to speak. That was the starting point. I don't care about the dresses, about the fingernails, about the tattoos, about the piercings. When it comes time for winning time, are you on board? Dennis was like, yeah, let me get these rings. Let me do what I need to do to get these rings. But Scottie, Scottie's underrated. Definitely. He didn't get his due. Get that man his flowers.
It's not that people don't think he was great. It's just that because he played with Mike, they use that as a knock against him.
I think people overstate the level that Mike lifted Scottie's game. Like, people act like if Scottie didn't have Mike,
he was nobody.
Yeah, like Scottie was trash.
No, Scottie was a lottery pick. Yeah. Scottie was a guy the Bulls identified and traded for on draft day because they saw his potential. Now, don't get me wrong, being paired with Mike and practicing and training with Mike, knowing what Mike's work ethic is, I'm sure that's good for anybody who is able to stand up to that level of rigor.
Mm-hmm.
And to Scottie's credit, he was. But Scottie's got to do the work. Scottie's got to do the practice. Scottie's got to spend the time in the gym.
Agreed.
And Scottie's got to make the plays in the game to get it done.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Look, I'm looking at the time. It's almost time for us to get on out of here, dude. You got anything to add, man?
It's my birthday.
It is your birthday, man. You got plans? What's going on? What is on the Mike Jones birthday agenda? I see you got the red cup, and I'm not. I see you sitting here. We're doing the show. Mike Jones has the red cup. It's his birthday. I'm trying to let you get out of here early because you can enjoy the last couple of hours of your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know? What's on the agenda? Are you one of those people who has to have a birthday month or birthday week?
Oh man, I barely do anything for my birthday at all. Sit back, just turn on the game, enjoy the night. Nothing too much.
All right. Well, look, man. Once again, I will hold this bottle of Michelob Ultra for you for the next time I see you. This is your birthday present right here. No, it will not.
I'll take it.
It will not be the whiskey that's also in the cabinet. You get this birthday bottle of Michelob Ultra.
Hey, I'll take it.
All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for Jonesy and Brown. Remember, you can hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jonesy and Brown. Make sure you download this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, Anchor. We're on a whole bunch of services. Just search Best in the World Sports. He is Mike Jones.
That's me.
Now, I heard back in the day they ain't want you.
It was a sad time in my life.
But it's your birthday now, and you're hot. So what happens now?
Oh man, they all on me, man.
Nice. Hey, you guys, y'all take care. We'll see you guys next week or whenever we do a podcast again.
Yeah, we'll be back next week.
We'll be back. We'll be back. Peace, y'all.
Peace.